What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to Redemption with Jabin. I bet you guys are wondering, why do I have some footage here from Nationals 2023 up? Well, because we're only 2 weeks away from Nationals 2024 as of today. 14 days in the future from the release of this video, we'll be already sitting down playing some Redemption at Nationals in Allendale, Michigan. So hopefully I'm going to be able to see most of y'all there. If not all y'all, that'd be sweet. But I wanted to take a little bit of time and just consider like everything that's changed in the past year and look back at one of the I don't know, I guess maybe, I don't know if quintessential is the right word, but kind of one of the more significant games from Nationals last year, and just the like overall just kind of feel of what the decks looked like, what the top decks looked like. I think this game in round 7 of Type 1 2 player between Nick Marshall and Jeremy Chambers is uh, kind of an indicator of that. And my question is, with all the cards that we've added in the past year, how different do we actually expect the the decks and the gameplay at Nationals to really be from last year? So I'm going to break it down real quick. We had 112 cards in Israel's Deliverance, the starter decks that are now legal, like between last year and this year. It's or the last Nationals and this Nationals, I should say. We got 112 cards in Israel's Deliverance. We've got 129 cards in Israel's Rebellion. And between those, like, and I guess in addition to those, like, Angel of God is kind of another card. Like, it was technically legal in Type 1 2 player last year at Nationals, but there was no Wilderness offense for it. So it's not technically, it doesn't technically count for what I'm counting, but I just want to, let people know I factored that in, or I guess I'm not factoring that in, but I did think about it. So 112 from Israel's Deliverance, 129 from Israel's Rebellion, 224 new cards in Roots, but then kind of, so I subtract 7 cards from the Roots because we had 7 identical versions of the Roots cards. I was going through and counted. I think it's only 7. I might have missed something. I got Hopper, Punisher, Wander, Lot's Wife, Sabbath Breaker, Balaam's Disobedience, and DOU. Holy Grail technically was already in rotation. However, the version that came out in Roots and also in the fundraiser is a gospel artifact, which makes it a distinct card from the persecuted church version, in my opinion. And I guess not just in my opinion, that's a fact. It's distinct. There are different there are things in the game that apply to it differently than the other one, so I'm not counting that as the same. So 7 cards in Roots that were the same, so don't technically add anything to the card pool. And then I'm also considering 7 cards from Israel's Deliverance, the starter decks, as the same as cards that were already in rotation. That includes 3 no special ability lost souls from each of the decks, and the 1 New Testament Son of God that technically has a different reference, or has a distinct reference, I think, from any other Son of God in rotation. However, it's not nativity, it is gospel, but there are already other Son of God cards that are gospel, that so it's not unique. There are no cards that apply to it differently than, say, the Matthew Son of God. So that is, or all that put together, plus the, I believe it's 9, if I counted correctly, promos that have been released since Nationals last year. So that's Raiders Camp and Tribute, were the fall and winter seasonal promos. And then we had, if I'm looking at my list here correctly, Solomon's Temple and Warrior in Training were the seasonal promos that were released this year, so for the spring and summer. And then we had Ark of the Covenant and Glory of the Lord as the 2 winter promos, or sorry, yeah, Is that right? Ark of the Covenant and Glory of the Lord are the two winter promos from this year, and then Banner of Love is the state promo. Uh, Judean Mediums is a regional promo, and Guardian of Your Souls is going to be the national promo, and that will be playable in, or like, it will be legal in Type 1 2 player. I don't want to automatically say it's playable because people will start, inferring the quality of the card from that, but I think it is sort of playable. It's at least playable. It's not necessarily good or competitive. That'll be interesting to see though at nationals if it does make an impact in some of these games, especially like if it was sitting on the table during this game that we're about to revisit, I guess, then it would have had a significant impact on both sides. So, anyways, that's not what we're here to discuss. But it's 9 promos that have been released since then. So altogether, adding up all of the cards, subtracting the ones that are duplicates of cards that were already in rotation, that gives us 460 new cards in the game, in the card pool, between last year's Nationals and 2 weeks from today at Nationals 2024. And the next day, Friday, is going to be Type 1 2 player. So 460 new cards in the pool. That's crazy. That's so many cards. And my question is, how many of them actually matter? How many of them are actually going to make a difference in what we're seeing? I think there are some, there are a few Roots cards that are seeing at least some play. Israel's Rebellion, not a whole lot of competitive play. There's a few with like Honeypot and stuff, but just like the GOC good stuff decks are maybe running the Lost Souls from Israel's Deliverance. The Underdeck can draw one. Lost Souls, maybe running Glory of the Lord. But there's just not a whole lot that's different I'm seeing from, I think, the top, like the most competitive decks. And so I wanted to just take some time. We're gonna watch this game, and I'm gonna do some kind of commentary on it. Maybe you guys have already seen it. It's definitely one of the more competitive games, I guess. I mean, all of the games were competitive. It's Nationals, top table, but this was between the player who ended up in first, Nick Marshall, and the player who ended up in second, Jeremy Chambers. And it's a very uh, significant game, I guess, for the national tournament, and I think demonstrates what some of the top, or I mean, of course, the top 2 players were playing in this tournament, and what we might be seeing again at nationals this year, based on just kind of what we're seeing in the current meta with the wacky Grand Prix and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think there are enough viable themes and kind of other decks out there. But if you guys listened to the podcast that was released yesterday, I was actually on there with John Hendricks, and we kind of talked about this towards the end with some of the questions in the community mailbag of, what do we expect to see at nationals? And they're going to do a more of a breakdown of what they kind of expect they see for like decks and for players in the podcast episode that's released just before nationals. But I kind of wanted to maybe reiterate uh, my view, at least currently, from what I said on the podcast, and that was that I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of difference. Like, we're still seeing the top offenses be the gospel good stuff, gospel barf, um, and some of the disciples. Nazareth is maybe going to be like the Roots card that makes the most impact. That adds to some of those disciple decks and stuff. But and maybe Lost Souls. I guess that's in there in the conversation there as well. But just overall, we're not seeing too much with like the new themes from Israel's Rebellion, and I don't know what else we're gonna be seeing. Roots added to a lot of themes, but I don't know if it brought any of the other themes up to the point where GOC good stuff is. So yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to say, and figured that maybe looking back at a game from last year would be helpful to, maybe point out what some of the differences are, if there are going to be any differences in styles of decks like this. Like you'll see that both of them, or I guess not, you'll see that Nick's running a Herod's defense and Jeremy's going to be running a more, Philistines focused defense. But both of them are running defenses that are still popular today. So that is what we're going to be doing for today's video. I am going to be playing it at 1.5 speed, just because I'm not doing any of their audio. I'm going to be listening to it very faintly, just so I don't miss anything that they're just because you can't see the entire screen or whatever, but their entire territory, I should say. But I will just kind of be doing some commentary on what they're doing. Before we get into that, though, I would like to give a shout out to our sponsors at Your Turn Games, because speaking of things from last Nationals that will also be at this Nationals, but maybe different or better, or maybe not different at all, is going to be Your Turn Games. They Andy and Kelsey have been great supporters of the game, and they support my channel here as well. So I'd appreciate it if you guys use them for all of your redemption supply needs. You can do some pre-orders for the new set that's coming out at Nationals, and you can also place some singles orders now. You've got like 4 days, I guess, left to place your pre-orders on singles, or not pre-orders, but place your orders on singles and get 10% off. And you don't need a discount code or anything. It's already factored into all the prices of singles. You can get 10% off, and then if you're going to be at Nationals, you can pick them up there. So go over to Your Turn Games, get that deal in there. You've got 4 days left to do it, so get ready. And hopefully you know what you're playing for Nationals at this point. I can't say that I'm necessarily there, but anyways, that is we're happy to be sponsored by Your Turn Games here on the channel, and want you to go ahead and use them to if you need any of that good old redemption gear. All right, so let's go back over to the game here, and we're gonna get it started. You got a handshake, and I believe here that Jeremy on the left side here has won the die roll. We see 3 lost souls from Jeremy, the humble, distressed, and lawless, and I believe just the 1 lost soul from Nick, which is the hopper lost soul. Jeremy's going first. He's doing 2-star abilities, one on Simon Peter to play a meek disciple from deck, which he grabs Matthew, plays him as meek. And then untouchable, if you control a meek hero, you may draw 2. So it's a pretty good star combo right there, just to get 2 more cards right off the bat. Jeremy triggers his lawless, and he decides to do it on Nick because Nick doesn't have any lost souls. Jeremy wants to be able to rescue something. He does have the hopper over there, I should say, but or I should clarify. And this is a crazy lawless. He reveals 4 lost souls and no evil cards. So 4 Drachma Coin and Reassuring Angels go back on the bottom. Harvest, Humble, Darkness, and the Crowd's Lost Souls all go into Nick's Land of Bondage. So Nick creates a token with Harvest and searches for Deceiver with Darkness. So kind of setting up for a block here. That's kind of not really what Jeremy wanted to see, I guess, because those 4 lost souls are all somewhat significant. I mean, Harvest not really, but like Crowds at least is going to potentially turn off Matthew. Darkness set him up with another evil character. Jeremy drops down Peter with 4 Drachma Coin and draws into Darkness and Salty. So he goes and gets an evil character with Darkness. He grabs a Malachite Slave, and Nick responds with a Son of God right away to just take Darkness off the table, and that negates it, so that shuffles Malachite Slave back into Jeremy's deck, and Nick has the Second Coming there right away to follow up. And Jeremy puts down Joanna. He activates Send the Helper to bounce Matthew, and basically he's got to figure out if he can get around the Crowd's Lost Soul here, and he does with a 3 woes. He plays it as good and negates the Crowd's Lost Soul. So that he's able to attack with Matthew, convert to Meek, and draw, I believe they count 7 brigades there. We've got silver, purple, clay, white, so 4 good, and then the 3 evil on abandonment and deceiver. So he gets to draw 7 right up to 16 cards in hand. Pretty typical start, I guess, for a GOC good stuff deck with a Matthew start and able to get around the Crowd's protection there. So Nick goes with the block goes for the block with the Deceiver. We can kind of see Jeremy's hand there, which is nice. Abandonment, Wall of Protection, Angel of the Winds, Denarius, Christian Martyr, Stricken. There's too many cards for me to name off in a reasonable amount of time, but either way, Nick goes, he's still searching with Deceiver and pulls out an Outsiders, which currently X is equal to 3. It's the number of good brigades on opponent's cards or opponent has in play. And Nick definitely doesn't have board advantage here, so he could choose to underdeck some stuff. But he's thinking about it here. I believe he just opts for the draw 3 instead of trying to underdeck anything at this point. Jeremy's already gotten his value what he needed from 3 woes, and he's probably expecting the interrupt anyway. So, he got initiative with abandonment. So he plays that, tries to withdraw Matthew. Jeremy interrupts and protects with Untouchable, and then uses the bounce effect to bounce Peter, which that was enough to win the battle. I think Jeremy knew pretty much what Nick had in hand, minus the 3 cards that he drew, but I think it was a pretty safe bet just to play the Untouchable there. It stops the Dom block with Christian Martyr falling away with the protection from harm. So he would have had to draw like a Feudal Inquisition or Contagious Fear or something like that, chump block sort of enhancement, which he did not find. So Jeremy's now dropping his hand down, puts down the Wall of Protection, which is off screen. One of the things I've learned from rewatching some of these is that I need to do a better job of framing the playmats, but also some players place cards off the side of the playmat, so also need to do a better job of training people on how to play on stream, I guess. I don't know. There's also a lot of tapping going on from Nick, which he was doing the entire day. So I have to have a no tapping sign or something like that. But anyways, we go to Nick's turn. He activates a couple of star abilities, and he realizes at about this point that he did them in the wrong order. Herod Archelaus top decks a dominant from each hand, and John top decks a good dominant from his deck. So he should have done the top deck from deck first, and then the one from hand, because then he would be able to draw into both the dominants there again. But he puts a Ride On Victoriously / Awesome Things on top of his deck and has to shuffle it away to put 3 woes on top. But he does get the Christian Martyr out of Jeremy's hand at this point, so that is beneficial for him. Nick puts down a Herod's Temple, activates the New Covenant to go and grab a good enhancement from deck. Thinking about good seed there. But looks like he's maybe going for the AOC or the Ascension there. That's right. Yeah, okay. So he's maybe looking at the board, looking at Jeremy's hero lineup that he has there. He's got an unconverted Simon Peter, an unconverted Simon the Zealous, unconverted Joanna. So the Ascension, being able to band in and utilize Jeremy's offense is looking pretty good right now. And he's got John and Matthias in hand, so that also is a good combo with the Ascension. And puts down Lazarus as well. Herod Archelaus in territory. I think he's just trying to get cards out of his hand, perhaps for Humble, but also because he wants to attack with Matthew and be able to draw as many as he can. So we see in Jeremy's hand he's got 3 good brigades and I believe it was 4 evil. So he gets to draw 7. Nick gets to draw 7. see Nick playing both Orphans and Thorns. That's probably not something that we're going to see at Nationals this year just because Lost Souls is a thing and can make tokens, which means that Soul Hide defenses are not really all that popular. Um, or, not as good as they could have been last year. Um, and so Nick, in order to get around the herdsman, or at least he thinks, he drops the resurrection before the block and is going to be banding in some heroes. One of them will be Lazarus so that he can negate herdsman, prevent herdsman, I guess. I was kind of thinking that maybe Nick should have just banded to Jeremy's Simon the Zealous and chosen the blocker here. Um, but he opts for Lazarus to draw one, negate evil cards. Does John to toss the next and draw two, and then Matthias to look at the top four, take one, and bounce his Lazarus. So he takes Falling Away from the top four. So these are things that we're still seeing. I don't know if I haven't seen quite as much Matthias, admittedly, in some recent decks. I think, the ones that are still mainly Disciples I'm seeing, but we can see that Nick here makes a slight misplay. You can see the Son of God in his hand that he didn't think to play, but he definitely should have to rescue Jeremy's Humble, because the Humble was active at this point and made it so that Philistine Commanders was CBP, could ban to Philistine Armor Bearer, who exchanged for Abimelech, King of Gerar, was able to ban to Herdsman, and Herdsman then was able to get Jeremy up to hand limit, drawing 8 cards here. And that left Nick in battle with John the Fisherman, which is usually a pretty good situation for someone who's blocking a Disciples player, because most of the stuff they want to play is going to be Clay. Like, so, he had grabbed the Ascension, but he can't play that on John. However, he's still tossing the next enhancement, so the Authority of Christ that he drew into worked out for him there to get rid of the evil characters at least. But because of the Philistine Commanders withdrawing all but one hero, Jeremy was able to play Falling Away and still get the block there. So definitely a misplay on Nick's part, and he recognizes that. And he also tries to play Delivered there through Jeremy's Salty, another misplay. Nick has been at the top table. This is round 7. He's been at the top table for all but the first round, I think. Maybe it was the second, or the first and second round. I can't remember when exactly he got up there. But once he got up to the top table in either the first or second round, he stayed there for the rest of the tournament. So Jeremy drops Son of God and Second Coming here, puts him up to 3, while Nick is sitting at 1, the one that he rescued with Son of God, Darkness there. And we'll see if we'll see how Jeremy is able to attack here. He's able to get through the Herods there. He's got Herod's Guard, Herod Archelaus, and Herod the Great, with Herod's Temple in territory. So this is another thing that, like, outside of the straight Disciples builds, I haven't seen much of Bartholomew lately, and Jeremy is still, or Jeremy is running Bartholomew in this version, which I think is fairly strong, getting those CBN gospel enhancements, especially with the ones that interrupt. That's something that I haven't seen as much of in some of the GOC good stuff or the gospel barf decks, where they're more just focused on getting the difficult to stop, like bans and things that don't require initiative, where Bart usually is getting initiative. So yeah, Jeremy does the stuff with Peter. He bans to Bart, reveals something to for the CBN enhancements, plays a Wicked from his own deck, and then triggers Send the Helper to grab Eternal Inheritance from his reserve. And Nick actually has a pretty decent block here with Herod's Executioner grabbing foreign horses from reserve and then being able to play Contagious Fear right away. So that reserves the evil character to protect Lost Souls from rescue. And Jeremy had decided to rescue Nick's Orphan's Lost Souls, so that was kind of untimely for Jeremy. However, still works out. What they're asking a judge about right now is if Jeremy can interrupt the battle using a dominant with Contagious Fear. So Jeremy plays Awesome Thing so that he can drop the Great Commission, which interrupts the battle. That interrupts Contagious Fear, bringing Herod's Executioner back into battle, and then Herod's Executioner can then be converted. The weapon also converts because it is equipped. I don't know what brigade he converted it to, but there's now a Herod's Executioner as a hero sitting in Nick's territory. So that puts Jeremy up to 4. He is beating Nick 4-1 in the current state of the game. Jeremy puts down Philistine Armor Bearer and plays Go Away, which cannot be prevented if used by a Philistine, so it gets through Salty, so he's able to reset his heroes, which that's always a little bit risky to do on your own turn in your discard phase, because then your opponent can, if your opponent has the opportunity to ban to them and use the convert abilities, especially with someone like Matthew there, it's a little bit risky, but it also gives him the opportunity to discard his own Angel of the Winds because it's vulnerable with Herod the Great on the table. That's something that I wonder if, maybe Nick could have done last turn, is kicked out the other guys and chosen Angel of the Winds and just kind of hoped that Jeremy didn't have someone to attack with in deck or someone to exchange with in deck that would be effective. But at this point, I don't know, Jeremy's still got maybe a little less than half his deck there, maybe like 15, 20 cards. So probably someone's still in there, I'm sure. So Nick gets up to 2, taking Salty with Son of God so that he can drop a good seed in his territory. Puts down a Patmos. Go to deck for a Disciple or Revelation Angel, I suppose. Probably I think he grabs Angel from the Sun here. So I think that's who he ends up attacking with. But he puts a 4D coin on Peter, pops that right away to draw 4. Activates a Book of the Covenant. That's one that, I don't know, are people still playing Book? I've seen it at least a little bit here and there. I think the tech that Nick was doing with it, I mean, obviously it's good to grab Send the Helper and you will remain, that kind of stuff, but also just the fact that it makes covenants cannot be negated is pretty good. Yeah, Jeremy points out that he can't reactivate New Covenant this turn. But like just the fact that I was kind of deciding which game to show. I was thinking about maybe doing round 8 with Nick versus Josh Potrats, just because it was the last round, and Josh is probably grateful that I didn't do that, just because the way that game went for Josh was not too favorable. But in that game, Josh had his negate neutrals right away, and Nick in his opening hand had both Book of the Covenant and New Covenant, or I guess his opening hand +3. I don't know if he had it right away, but on his first turn going second, he was still able to use his New Covenant through the negate neutrals. That's a benefit of Book of the Covenant, I guess, just with people playing the negate neutrals. But anyways, Nick drops his 3 woes. I'm not sure exactly what he negated with it, but or I think he was maybe negating Supercilious Scribes and kind of forgot that Humble was still active, but not really caring that it actually mattered. He goes to Angel from the Sun, exchanges with Simon, chooses Scribes. Jeremy still uses the ability because of Humble, and exchanges something in hand with an enhancement in reserve. Goes and grabs Unsuccessful, and Nick plays the Ascension here, and this is kind of what I was talking about with the risky aspect, I guess, of Jeremy bouncing all his heroes and putting them back down, letting Nick have the opportunity uh, to ban them in. So he bans to Joanna, bans to Bart, bans to his own reassuring angels. He's got Matthew in his hand, but that means that he can ban to Jeremy's Matthew because he's not meek. He also bans to Lazarus and Matthias. So what actually is interesting about this play, so it is Joanna first, does the draw two, and that's it for Joanna with the convert because she wasn't blocked from hand. But Bart can reveal and also play a Lost Soul from deck, plays Distressed from his own deck. This is where Nick actually makes a misplay that Jeremy doesn't catch, or not a misplay, but an illegal play actually, where when you do a mass band like this, any character that is adding more characters to battle, either through an exchange or a choose ability or a band, has to go at the end. And so Reassuring Angels can't actually exchange for John until the other heroes have completed, which is relevant because Matthias has to convert to Meek to bounce a character. He's trying to bounce Supercilious Scribes. Um, Looking at Jeremy's hand, I don't think it actually matters because he wouldn't have had a way to stop Matthias through Lazarus anyway. Lazarus is negating of evil cards, but that's just something to make a note of or be aware of, I guess. Nick is playing Majestic Heavens. People weren't even really playing that last year, so I wouldn't expect to see much of that this year still, especially with the Lost Soul being around. But um, yeah, I think that shouldn't really have to worry too much about that. But it is decent reserve access. Um, so they're putting the or kind of figuring out the order of things here. Where Distressed was negating Akeem, so Jeremy can still use his Prosperity. And we'll see. The score is now 4-3 in Jeremy's favor. So if he can close it up on this turn, that would be the game. I won't give it away quite yet, but yeah. You can see that Jeremy's hand is pretty loaded. He's got an Eternal Inheritance, he's got a Resurrection, Authority of Christ, but Herods can usually pull out some sneaky wins. Or sneaky blocks, I should say. Jeremy bounces his Bartholomew with Send the Helper because Akeem is negated by Distressed. And so Jeremy does Peter and Bart, getting them both as Meek. Not doing anything other than revealing a dominant to get the CBN Gospel enhancements. And Send the Helper trigger for Jeremy, so he can grab Eye on it from his reserve. Adds ends. Reveals 7, grabs Faith of Samuel. So once again, Jeremy's hand is just loaded with good options there. And he's still got the Resurrection yet to play. Nick's thinking about his blocking options, looking at Jeremy's discard pile, trying to figure out what dominance he has left. He knows that Jeremy had to play Awesome Things last turn, so that's not an option. So I think he's trying to figure out, what, if anything, Jeremy can do kind of outside of regular initiative. So he blocks with Herod's Guard, prevents the next good card played in battle, and then exchanges for Herod Archelaus, who can go to Jeremy's reserve and take out a good card. Takes out Firefoxes to hopefully clear the way for anything, or for not letting that be a block later in the game. And instead of passing initiative, because Nick probably has like a Feudal Inquisition or something like that, Jeremy opts to play the Resurrection at this point. And it's actually kind of funny how it works out because Nick had used the search ability on Herod Archelaus, Jeremy was able to abandon Herod's executioner and play the or use foreign horses with the play next ability to play Eternal Inheritance and win the game there. Get to that. That was number 5. So the next was prevented with, and that was Joanna in front of Herod's guard. So then John was able to come in, toss the next just in case. And foreign horses on a converted Herod's executioner for the win. Kind of crazy, I guess. I think they kind of talk about what was left, but like, um, yeah, Nick had feudal inquisition and falling away. So the converted Herod's executioner with the foreign horses was exactly what Jeremy needed there in order to get the win. So Jeremy won this game 5-3. That was the only loss that Nick took throughout the entire tournament, and because Jeremy had a timeout tie, and I believe either a let's see, trying to do the math here. I think he had like 20.5 points when Nick had 21. So Nick had 21 game points, which means he had 7 full wins, and then this was his only loss. And it was a full loss against Jeremy. And Jeremy had, I believe, 6 full wins, a timeout tie against Josh Potratz, which means that his other game was a timeout loss, and I don't remember off the top of my head who that was against, but it put him a half a point behind Nick. So even though he beat Nick, he still took second place. And you can see that both of them were playing, very similar offenses, and both, both were playing defenses that I think we expect to see at nationals. Jeremy was playing a more Philistine heavy defense than I think we'll see a lot of. Most people are playing either just like kind of black good stuff, so it's maybe mostly Philistines, but Priest of Zeus, Outsiders, that kind of stuff are in there. Jeremy's deck was really focused on being able to get to Herdsman on turn 1, or I guess, yeah, it was Nick's turn 1 that Jeremy very easily had access to Herdsman there, just had to make sure that he could actually get it active, and that was maybe a game changer right there, like a game deciding block, or block really right there, where Nick was didn't have the total, I don't know, knowledge, I guess, at that point, or realization, I should say, that he needed to play Son of God in the Humble there. And so, this was I would still say a close game, even though Jeremy kind of had a fairly decisive win, but it could have gone the other way, had a couple things been different. And I'm just kind of throwing it out there that 460 cards added to the card pool later. I don't know that I really expect to see the top decks be too much different than this. This is still kind of what we're seeing at the top of the meta, and there have been a few curveballs, a few shakeups there. Jared's deck was that he won the biggest Lackey Grand Prix ever with was fairly different. It still had some disciples, the Matthew, John, I think Peter was in there, but it was just more purple focused and had some other purple hand control aspects to it. But I don't know. I don't see that necessarily being super consistent. Jared's not going to be there to pilot it, unfortunately. But I'm not sure that it's going to be a whole lot, that the meta overall is going to be a whole lot different from what we saw in this game, and just kind of at nationals as a whole last year. And I could be wrong. I'm open to that. But I would, if anyone has any thoughts on things that they might see as different, be happy to have conversations on Discord or in the comments or something here. But I think we might see some Daniel still. Probably we'll see some honeypot variations, and those are maybe the decks that have the best odds against a GOC good stuff deck like this. I mean, I think maybe Honeypot in particular, especially if they win the die roll and get to go first. But that's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be tricky to say that is that the I would hesitate to put money on Honeypot, I guess, is all I'm saying. I would hesitate to put money on anything in a card tournament like this, but I would more so hesitate to put money on anything but like a gospel good stuff deck, and I would be happy to be wrong. It's probably not what I'm going to be playing. I haven't decided for sure yet, but I think I'm going to want to try to play something a little bit, different, a little off the wall, try to counter the meta if I can, just because I'm not a huge fan of the most popular decks usually. But yeah, I just wanted to go over this game, see what was different. Hopefully you guys enjoyed some of the commentary, or a rewatch, kind of just going back in the time machine for a year. The last thing here, I suppose, that you guys are probably all interested in is, maybe you caught it at the beginning when I said welcome to Redemption with Jabin. I've got a spoiler for all y'all, and it is Jabin the Assembler. So at Nationals, you're not only going to see 460 new cards in the card pool, but you might be able to see this guy in Israel's Inheritance. This guy is a 7/6 Canaanite King, evil character, warrior class, card 91 in Israel's Inheritance, and the special ability, may ban to a Canaanite from reserve, or you may give another evil Canaanite to opponent's territory to discard all cards in battle. So there's a few interesting things, or at least a couple interesting things about this guy. Like, both of these abilities are fairly unique, and you get to do one or the other. But he can ban to a Canaanite from reserve, so maybe there are going to be ways to reserve your Canaanites, or you're just going to have more ways to get Canaanites out of your reserve. And this is going to be one of the easier ways to do it. Other cards like the Deceiver can exchange to reserve or whatever, but this he's kind of like David Outcast Refuge, which who bans to a character directly from reserve, which is kind of cool. It's a unique ability. I'm excited to see that being used a little more. I'm always excited to see unique abilities and just see what the possibilities are with them. But then the other one, the other ability option you have here is you can give another evil Canaanite, so not Jabin, but another one, to opponent's territory to discard all cards in battle. So once you run out of Canaanites in reserve, you can give your opponent an evil Canaanite, which is something that Canaanites are going to want to try to do. That's kind of just historically how the theme has gone, and so far from the spoilers, we've seen that continue, I guess. And so you can give a Canaanite to your opponent, which is kind of a benefit for you, to discard all cards in battle. So it's a potential way to win the battle. It will give your opponent special initiative in most cases, assuming you're taking out all their heroes. But like if nothing is protected or whatever. But yeah, I think he's got kind of like an Emperor Otho or King Zimri type of ability. Unfortunately, no Herod's Temple with this guy because he's Old Testament, so you can't do like the toss aspect of it. But I think there are other ways that you can make him work better. Or at least I'm looking forward to seeing some ways to make him work, where maybe you do have a way to toss cards or negate enhancements or something, and you're banning this guy into battle. So that is the spoiler from my channel that I get to share with you guys. Nothing quite as fancy as Baboony Tim's spoiler video, or Daniel's spoiler like whole website, basically, where he's got all the different card faces and stuff that he's showing. But hopefully you guys enjoy that. That's what you get for sticking around to the end of the video. And if you did get here and it's not posted in Discord yet, then maybe you can be the one to share this in the spoiler channel on Discord. And I guess I didn't really warn you that the spoiler was coming, so hopefully nobody's upset. But Nationals is only 2 weeks away. It's just one card. You'll be fine. So yeah, let people know that they missed this if they didn't watch to the end like John Hendricks. And yeah, that's all we're gonna do for this week's video. Is a little bit shorter, but yeah, still some good stuff hopefully. And I'm curious to see what other people's predictions are for the Nationals meta. Like, are we actually going to see a whole lot different from last year at the top tables? I know we're going to see a lot of different stuff, perhaps in the mid range. Maybe that's where I'll be hanging out. But at the top tables, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of the similar strategies, and I'm hoping that by next year that changes, but we'll see how things shake up. We're going to be getting more cards, as you can see, in Israel's Inheritance, and I'm excited to see what these themes can add to the game and can supplement some of these OT offenses that I know a lot of us want to be able to play, but just kind of feel like we're not quite there yet with GOC just being kind of the dominant set of over the last few years. So anyways, that is it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next time.